The sunlight filtered through the trees, dappling the ground with golden patches as Sarah stood in the stable, the warm scent of hay and the musky aroma of horses enveloping her. Today felt different, almost electric. Her heart raced as she combed her fingers through Daisy's mane, the black mare's gentle eyes watching her with an understanding that transcended words. It had been a couple of months since her mother's marriage had turned her world upside down, and it was in moments like this that Sarah found solace. But quietude was soon interrupted by an unexpected visitor. "Hey, horse whisperer." Jake's voice rang out, playful yet somehow disarming. Sarah's heart did a somersault as she turned to face her stepbrother. He stood at the entrance, the soft sunlight casting a halo around him, with his tousled hair and an easy grin that could melt any tension away. "Could you not sneak up on me like that?" she replied, feigning annoyance. Yet her heart fluttered inexplicably at the sight of him. There was always something magnetic about Jake, an allure she couldn't quite place but couldn't ignore either. "Just thought I'd see what made you abandon the world," he quipped, stepping inside the stable with a casual ease that put her at immediate ease. It was strange how quickly he could shift her mood. From the solitary sanctuary she often sought to a whirlwind of emotions she sometimes wished to tame. "Well, this is my escape," she shot back, trying to sound indifferent as she resumed brushing Daisy. "What do you want anyway?" Jake leaned against the stall door, folding his arms across his chest. "I was hoping for some riding tips," he said, tilting his head slightly, the mischievous glint in his eyes transforming the request into a challenge. "Really? You want riding tips from me?" she replied, raising an eyebrow. Despite their familial ties, there was something about that moment that made it feel significant. Sarah had always been the more serious one, schoolwork and equestrian goals shaping her identity, while Jake had his own charm rooted in spontaneity. "Wouldn't hurt, right?" he said, flashing that trademark grin, one that had a way of disarming her resolve. "Let's make it interesting. I'll race you to the clearing." Before she could process his challenge, he was already striding towards Thunder, his magnificent chestnut stallion, a creature that seemed to embody his adventurous spirit. In a brief moment of defiance, Sarah felt a surge of excitement. After all, what was the point of life if she always played it safe? As she mounted Daisy, feeling the familiar comfort of her horse beneath her, Sarah couldn't help but feel alive. "You're on," she shouted, and with that they were off, galloping out of the stable and into the open expanse of the trail. The wind rushed past her, the world around becoming a blur as she kept an eye on Jake. He was fast a dangerous rider who had an almost magical connection with Thunder. Sarah pushed Daisy harder, exhilaration coursing through her veins. But as they reached the clearing, something inside Sarah twisted, a feeling of uncertainty that clashed with the thrill of the race. Jake was not just her stepbrother. He was also her closest companion, the one who understood the weight of being uprooted and reshaped into something entirely new. When they finally pulled to a stop, breathless and laughing, the backdrop of the setting sun framed them perfectly. Jake looked over, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "Looks like I won," he teased, trying to catch his breath. "Only because you have Thunder," she shot back, her heart still racing for reasons she couldn't quite articulate. As they dismounted, Jake offered a hand to help her down, a simple gesture that made her heart skip. She took it and found herself lingering a little too long, gazing into his eyes. There was always a tension simmering between them, a connection that was deeper than family, yet unspoken. Standing amidst the wildflowers, the golden hues of sunset washing over them, Sarah felt a strange flutter in her chest. It was more than just sibling friendship. It was an unexplored territory they danced around, afraid to go too far. "Ever feel like we're not just step-siblings?" Jake asked suddenly, his voice low, breaking the silence that had settled between them. If only he knew how often she had wondered the same thing. "What do you mean?" she replied, trying to keep her tone casual but failing as her heart began to pound. Sometimes it feels like there's something more. It's confusing." He shifted his gaze, looking away, as if he couldn't quite believe he had said it. Sarah swallowed hard, her mind racing. She could almost feel the weight of his words hanging in the air, a challenge and an invitation both. "I get it," she finally said, relieved to find her voice. "This whole situation has changed everything, hasn't it?" "Yeah," he murmured, his gaze flickering back to hers, searching for a sign. But it doesn't have to be awkward. We can just enjoy what we have. Agreed, Sarah breathed, a rush of warmth enveloping her. If only they could bottle this moment, this sheer innocence. They stood there for a moment longer, both lost in thought, the connection between them thickening in the warm evening air. Without thinking, she took a step closer, her heart hammering, a silent understanding passing between them, fraught yet thrilling. But just as quickly she pulled back, the weight of their realities crashing in. Could this be real? Jake broke the tension with a laugh, shaking his head. Well, I guess I'll stick to racing. Less complicated. Probably a good idea, Sarah said, forcing a smile that felt somewhat fragile. But as they mounted their horses once again and rode back home, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they had perhaps crossed an invisible line, one that blurred the boundaries of friendship and something deeper. Riding side by side, it was clear they were embarking on a new adventure, not just with horses, but with each other. Yet, for now, they would play by the rules and navigate the uncharted territory of their bond, uncertain of where it would lead. The ride home was punctuated by laughter and shared glances. But beneath the surface, a different current flowed, one that spoke of unfulfilled desires and the thrill of a connection that could either blossom or shatter, depending on the choices they made. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an orange glow, Sarah couldn't help but wonder, could love ever truly be born from the unexpected complexities of being step-siblings? Or would fear forever linger between them, keeping their hearts tethered to what could have been, a leap into adventure? The cool morning breeze nipped at Sarah's skin as she hurried to the stables, anticipation buzzing beneath her skin. Today was the day they had planned their first real adventure together, a trail ride that promised to take them deeper into the woods, away from the familiar paths of the stables. With each hoofbeat, she could feel the thrill of the unknown waiting just around the corner. As she entered the barn, the smell of fresh hay filled her nostrils, grounding her in this sacred space. Daisy nickered softly, her big brown eyes glinting with warmth. Sarah ran her fingers along the horse's neck, trying to calm the nerves that threatened to bubble over. "Are you ready for a day of adventure?" she whispered to Daisy, who bobbed her head as if in agreement. Just then, Jake appeared at the entrance, his silhouette accentuated by the morning light. He wore a plaid shirt that contrasted prominently against his tousled hair, giving him a rugged charm. "Hey, Sarah, you ready to ride?" "Always," she shot back, her heart racing for reasons she couldn't quite explain. As he stepped into the stable and approached her, the comfortable bond they forged during the last few weeks surged back, lighting a fire in her chest. He was a natural around the horses, confidently checking Thunder's saddle and gear. But there was something more in the way he moved, as if he carried an air of mystery that made her want to unravel it piece by piece. "Let's get going before we lose the daylight," he said, and with a nod, they prepared their horses for the day's adventure. As they rode out onto the trail, the trees arched overhead, filtering sunlight into a kaleidoscope of green. The path ahead was untraveled, both exhilarating and terrifying. Sarah felt her heart pound as they moved further from the stables, the embrace of nature swallowing them whole. "Ever think about what's just beyond the trees?" Jake asked, breaking the silence as they entered a particularly dense thicket. "Only every day," she replied, scanning the horizon. "It's like there's a whole world out here waiting for us. We just have to be brave enough to explore it." He turned to her, a playful smirk tugging at the edges of his lips. "I'll be brave as long as you promise to keep up." "Challenge accepted," she shot back, her competitive spirit igniting once more. With a swift kick to their horses, they emerged from the trees and into an open meadow, the sunlight pouring down like liquid gold. They laughed and raced across the field, a newfound freedom suffusing their souls. But as they slowed to a walk, a sense of vulnerability returned, wrapping around her like a heavy blanket. Every moment spent in his presence felt charged with unspoken words. She didn't want to ruin it, yet couldn't shake the feeling that something was brewing beneath the surface. "We should stop and take a break," Jake suggested, and Sarah nodded. They dismounted and found a shaded spot beneath an old oak tree, its roots gnarled and strong. As they sat on the cool grass, throwing blades at each other playfully, The conversation shifted to their shared dreams, an exchange of honesty that felt exposing yet liberating. "I want to compete in the national championships," Sarah revealed, her voice tinged with passion. "I've been training for years. It's my dream." "I can see you winning one day," Jake replied earnestly, his gaze intense. "You have the heart for it." "Thanks," she replied, feeling her cheeks warm under his praise. It was times like this that made her question the nature of their relationship. Sure, they were step-siblings, but the lines were blurred when their hearts intertwined so easily. "Is there anything you want to achieve?" she asked after a moment of silence. "Yeah," he said thoughtfully, his brow furrowing slightly. "I want to travel, see the world beyond these woods. It's just... sometimes I feel tethered, you know? Family, responsibilities. It can feel like a cage." "I get that," she admitted, the weight of his words resonating within her. "Sometimes I think I'm just one competition away from breaking free. I want to ride toward my dreams. Not just inside the arena." Jake eyed her, a flicker of understanding passing between them. "Maybe one day we can break free together," he suggested casually, but there was an undertone that made her heart race. They shared a laugh, but the moment lingered, an unspoken agreement hovering in the air. Every second spent together seemed to dissolve the walls they'd built, intertwining their lives in ways that felt both thrilling and daunting. Just then, a rustle in the bushes drew their attention. Sarah's heart quickened as Jake reached for the camera he had brought along for the ride. "Let's capture this moment," he said, motioning for her to strike a pose. Sarah stood beside Daisy, feigning confidence, but her insides twisted. The snap of the camera echoed through the woods, preserving a memory that felt both innocent and intimate. Suddenly, from behind the tree, a deer leaped into view, its graceful form drawing their attention. "Wow!" Sarah exclaimed, captivated by the sight. They both fell silent, letting the beauty of the moment wash over them. But then, Jake, ever the instigator, whispered, "I dare you to get closer." "Are you serious?" she replied, laughing nervously. "Come on. Just a little closer," Jake urged, his excitement contagious. With hesitation wrapped in excitement, Sarah moved cautiously toward the deer. She felt the thrill of the dare surge through her veins, yet her heart was tethered with caution. But just as she got within a few feet, the deer bolted back into the trees, nerves seeming to ripple through the air. "See? You scared it away," Jake chuckled, making her roll her eyes. But in that charged space, Sarah felt something shift. As they made their way back to their horses, the adrenaline from the encounter shifted the atmosphere once more, heightening feelings unacknowledged. "Let's ride deeper into the woods," Jake suggested, tilting his head toward the trails they had yet to explore. "Okay," Sarah replied, her heart racing at the thought of venturing deeper. They resumed their ride, weaving through the trees, the sunlight glinting on their faces, illuminating the impasse they found themselves at. The deeper they rode, the more her impulses fought against her logic each glance, and shared laughter igniting a flame she couldn't fully extinguish. Finally, they reached a secluded clearing, encircled by towering trees, the world around them falling silent. The tranquility enveloped them, an enticing atmosphere where secrets could whisper between heartbeats. "Let's stop here," Jake suggested, his voice low but warm. They dismounted and let their horses wander, grazing nearby as they sank to the ground beside each other. "Why do I feel like this place was made for us?" Sarah mused, gazing up at the trees swaying gently in the breeze. "Because it feels safe," Jake replied, "like we can be ourselves without judgment." For a moment, silence enveloped them. The world outside felt distant, suffocated by the trees surrounding them, making the intimacy of their connection all the more potent. "You know," Jake began, his tone shifting slightly, "I never imagined I'd get so close to you. It's a good thing. but also scary. I feel the same, Sarah confessed, looking down, the weight of her admission heavy in the air. Maybe we should just embrace it, he suggested. Whatever this is between us. As she turned to face him, their eyes locked, and time seemed to slow down. The unsaid words hovered around them, the depth of their connection palpable. It was as if the trees themselves leaned in closer, listening to the whispers of their hearts. But then, in a sudden rush of uncertainty, Sarah broke the gaze. Let's just enjoy the moment, she said quickly, the walls around her heart climbing back up. No need to complicate things. The lightheartedness in Jake's expression dulled a little, shadows flickering behind his eyes. Sure, let's just enjoy it, he replied, keeping his tone light but unable to hide the change. As they sat, in the clearing, laughter and conversation resumed, but the electric current of their earlier confessions lingered like an uninvited guest, reframing the dynamic they had been navigating. In that enchanting moment, amidst the trees and the serenity, Sarah felt both alive and apprehensive, wrestling with her feelings for the boy who had stepped into her life and shifted everything. They continued to bond, trading jokes and stories, but with every shared smile came the reminder of what remained unaddressed. And as the sun began its descent, casting elongated shadows across the clearing, Sarah realized that adventures could lead to more than just new places. They could lead to a journey into the heart itself, where things remained beautifully complicated and thrillingly undefined. Though each moment together felt charged, neither was ready to unravel the truth that lay beneath their shared laughter. For now, they would savor the ride, uncertain of how far that journey would take them, or what twists awaited them in the tangled woods of their emotions. The secret discovery. The sky was a palette of oranges and pinks as Sarah and Jake made their way back toward the stables. The sun was beginning to sink, casting long shadows that danced around them, much like the unspoken tension that hung in the air. It was a feeling that buzzed at the edges of their conversations, and tonight it seemed even more palpable, tantalizing them with the prospect of something deeper. I can't believe how far we rode today, Sarah said, trying to keep the mood light as they guided their horses along the familiar trail, but within her, a storm brewed a blend of excitement and anxiety that twirled in her stomach. Yeah, it was incredible, Jake replied, glancing sideways at her, an unguarded smile gracing his lips. We make a great team out here. Agreed, she replied, her heart fluttering in response. There was something electric about their partnership, especially when they traversed the wild together, each thrill binding them closer. As they arrived at the stables, they dismounted and led their horses inside. But as Sarah turned to untack Daisy, she felt Jake's gaze linger on her. It sent a shiver down her spine, making her acutely aware of the charged atmosphere. "What's going on, Jake?" she asked, unable to hide her curiosity. "Just thinking," he said, a hint of something serious in his tone. "I feel like we've been closer lately. Like really close." "Yeah?" she replied, trying to maintain a casual demeanor while her heart raced. "I guess we've just been spending a lot of time together." "Time together, yeah," he nodded, his eyes serious. "But it feels like there's something more, doesn't it?" Her breath caught in her throat. The unspoken connection they shared, the way their glances lingered a little too long, was something she had tried to ignore. "Maybe," she said, choosing her words carefully. "But those kinds of feelings can get messy." "Oh, but what's life without a little mess?" he said with a teasing lilt. But the sincerity in his eyes made her heart skip. Just then, a rustle from outside grabbed their attention, snapping them from the moment. Sarah turned to the stable door, a thrill of anticipation sparking within her. "Did you hear that?" "Yeah. Sounds like the horses might be restless," Jake replied, but there was something in his tone that hinted at curiosity too. "Let's check it out," Sarah suggested, her adventurous spirit flaring to life. As they stepped out into the evening air, anticipation wrapped around them, blending seamlessly with the thrill of what lay beyond the stables. They made their way toward the sound, stepping carefully through the grass. Under the setting sun, the world felt painted in shades of gold, and Sarah's heart raced, her mind caught between wanting the comfort of the known and the thrill of the unexpected. As they approached the edge of the woods, Sarah spotted movement in the shadows, 3 figures darting among the trees. "What do you think that is?" she whispered, curiosity and excitement bubbling over. "I don't know, but we should get a closer look," Jake said, his adventurous nature kicking in. Creeping closer, they fell silent, hearts pounding in their chests. As they reached a vantage point, they realized what was happening. 2 young boys, no older than 12, were trying to corral a wild horse that had strayed from the neighboring farm. "Look at that," Sarah gasped, feeling an adrenaline surge of concern for the animal. "We can't just let them chase it like that." Jake nodded, keenly aware of the anxiety that baked in her voice. "Let's step in," he said decisively, and before she could protest, he stepped forward. "Hey, you can't just run after it like that," Sarah called, her voice firm and commanding. As the boys turned to look at her, they hesitated, sensing the authority in her tone. "Who are you?" one of the boys shot back, defiance written all over his freckled face. "I'm Sarah, and this is Jake. We're here to help, but you have to listen to us," she replied, trying to keep her cool as she approached the scene. The younger boy shifted nervously. "We just wanted to catch it. It's wild. We want to ride it. Do you even know how to handle a wild horse?" Jake asked, frowning slightly. "You need to approach carefully, or it could hurt you." The older boy, sensing Jake's authority, crossed his arms but reluctantly agreed. "Fine, but if you're so smart, then what do you suggest?" Looking back at Daisy, who stood calmly nearby, Sarah took a deep breath. "We'll slowly guide it toward the clearing. If we can get it into a fence, we can calm it down with our horses." The boys exchanged glances, their bravado slipping as they realized they needed help. "Okay, let's do it." Together they moved cautiously, Sarah and Jake leading Daisy toward the wild horse, while the boys flanked on either side, attempting to cut off its escape. The wild horse bolted, its mane flowing like a wild flame against the backdrop of the twilight sky. Sarah felt her pulse racing in sync with the horse's frantic movements, a mix of exhilaration and anxiety propelling her forward. The young boys chased after it, but it was clear they lacked experience. Just as she was about to call out instructions, Jake grabbed her arm, pulling her back slightly. "Wait," he whispered, his gaze fixated on the horse. "Let's see if we can calm it down from a distance." The horse whinnied, panic-filled eyes scanning the area. Sarah's heart ached at the sight. Something about its desperation mirrored her own internal turmoil. "Maybe it just needs space," she said softly, trying to soothe them both. The wild horse took a few tentative steps, coming to a standstill as it surveyed the unfamiliar faces around it. "Daisy can help," Jake suggested, leading her slowly forward, his voice calm and collected. "Just let her do her thing." As they approached, Sarah could feel the electricity of the moment, the chance to calm something wild resonating deeply within her. Daisy's gentle aura seemed to radiate warmth, as if she understood her role in that moment. "Easy now, girl," Sarah murmured to Daisy, hoping to harness her energy. The wild horse's eyes flickered, and for a moment it hesitated, instinctively drawn to the calm presence of Daisy. "Now," Jake said, taking the opportunity to edge closer, weaving in coordination with Sarah. The boys followed suit, and together, they slowly encircled the wild horse. With a gradual tightening of the circle, the wild horse began to relax, the frantic energy ebbing away. Sarah could feel her own tension dissipate, replaced by a sense of unity among theme, a feeling of connectivity that filled the air. Finally, with one last calming nicker from Daisy, the wild horse took a tentative step forward, eventually allowing Daisy to nuzzle against its coat. Cheers erupted from the boys, admiration glimmering in their eyes as they witnessed the transformative power at play. "We did it!" one exclaimed, all bravado gone as they stepped closer to observe the bonding moment. Yet, in the midst of their victory, Sarah felt a pang of something else an awareness that the wildness they had just tamed was only a reflection of what lay beneath the surface of her own emotions. Jake leaned closer, a proud smile on his face. "You were incredible out there," he said, meaning every word. "That was amazing teamwork." She beamed, the adrenaline of the moment coursing through her. "I couldn't have done it without you. Jake, you kept me grounded." As they shared a lingering glance, the moment felt charged once more, the edges of their relationship blurring amid the thrill of accomplishment. But just when it seemed the tension might sew their fates tighter, the wild horse suddenly jerked back, startled by a sudden movement in the trees. It bolted away from Daisy, sprinting into the depths of the woods. "No, not again," Jake shouted, but Sarah could see the determination in his eyes. "Let's go," she urged, adrenaline reigniting as they both dashed after the wild horse, with the boys trailing behind. They plunged into the shadows of the forest, the trees closing in around them, twisting branches sparking feelings of danger and excitement. Sarah's heart raced, both from the thrill of the chase and the knowledge that they were crossing into unknown territory. "Head toward the clearing," Jake called, his voice managing to be heard over the rush of leaves as they sprinted through the underbrush. Sarah followed closely behind, fueled not only by determination, but also by the reckless energy of their bond. As they emerged into a larger clearing, breathless and exhilarated, the wild horse was still in sight, but it had calmed enough to stand still, unsure of its next move. The boys finally caught up to them, panting heavily. "Now what?" one of them wheezed, glancing between the horse and Jake. "We stay calm," Jake said, his voice steady. "Sarah, you keep Daisy steady. I'll try to coax it back." Sarah nodded, her heart racing as she turned back to Daisy, who stood resolute beside her. She fought the urge to blur the lines of their connection, knowing they were embarking not just on a physical quest, but also a journey into the heart of their emotions. Jake started to approach the wild horse slowly, his movements calculated and deliberate. The nervous energy crackled in the air, a reflection of the complicated feelings swirling within Sarah as she watched. With each slow step, Jake became not just a rider but a protector, an anchor for both the horse and Sarah. It felt as if time stood still, the moment stretched, filled with an unspoken promise and raw energy. "Easy now," he cooed softly, reaching out his hand in a gesture of peace. The wild horse seemed to recognize the effort, its muscles slowly relaxing under the gentle vibes radiating from Jake. Sarah held her breath, caught between admiration and an exhilarating fear of the unknown, desperate to see what would unfold next. This exhilaration was unlike anything she had ever felt, an unpredictable journey that both terrified and ignited her spirit. In that clearing, surrounded by the beauty of nature and the charge of adrenaline, she could sense that the boundaries of their connection were about to expand once more. What could this all mean? As the wild horse finally stepped forward to nuzzle Jake's hand, she realized they had come to a crossroads, where adventure met vulnerability, and where the wildness of their hearts began to realize they might just belong together. And as they stood there, heartbeats synchronizing with the rhythm of nature, the thrill of the moment rang louder than any unspoken truth. Together they would forge ahead instead of retreating, facing the chaos of emotions that mingled between the wild and the tame. The moment of truth as the wild horse edged closer to Jake, Sarah felt an overwhelming rush of emotions coiling within her. There was something undeniably powerful about witnessing Jake's unwavering focus and calmness, not just with the horse, but in how he controlled the energy around them. The boys stood wide-eyed, forgetting their earlier bravado, captivated by the scene unfolding before them. "Just a little more, buddy," Jake murmured, extending his hand further. The boyish charm that had once seemed so effortless now exuded a quiet strength. In that moment, he wasn't just her stepbrother. He was a hero, a protector of the wild, guiding an entire adventure with his sheer determination. "Look," Sarah whispered to the boys, breaking the silencing tension. "He's almost got it." She could feel the heat of the moment thrumming around her. The wild horse, still skittish, took tentative steps, finally moving closer to Jake's offering hand. "Keep your distance, you two," Jake instructed the boys, casting a glance back at them. "We don't want to startle it again," they nodded, barely breathing as they watched the two connect Jake and the horse. both wild in their own rights but seeking a bond. Just then, Sarah felt an unusual urgeia whisper from within that compelled her to step closer. It was a leap of faith, one she almost hesitated to take, but as she approached, the wild horse turned its curious gaze toward her, its deep brown eyes mirroring her own unguarded emotions. "Just breathe, okay?" she said softly to the horse, feeling the need to soothe the creature as though it were a mirror to her own turmoil. "You're safe here." Jake looked at her, eyes bright with admiration. "You have a way with them," he said, and for the first time, Sarah saw a flicker of something deeper in his gaze, something that prompted her heart to quicken. But as if the wind had caught the horse's attention, it perked up and took a couple of steps back, sensing an approaching thunderstorm brewing above the horizon. The trees above rustled ominously, and the air thickened with anticipation. "Oh," Jake murmured, concern creasing his brow. "We need to move quickly. Rain is coming and we can't let it run off. I'll help," one of the boys exclaimed, stepping forward impulsively. "Wait, no," Jake warned. But before he could react, the boy lunged at the horse, jostling the atmosphere around them. The wild animal snorted and bolted, disappearing into the nearby woods. "Great, now we've lost it," Jake exclaimed, frustration seeping into his voice as he watched the horse disappear. "What should we do now?" Sarah asked, the urgency heightening her senses. "Follow the tracks. We'll be able to see where it goes," Jake replied, determination flickering in his eyes. "But we need to stick together. We can't lose one another in these woods." With a nod, Sarah took a deep breath, the thrill of the hunt igniting her spirit once again. Together they jogged into the woods, the underbrush oddly welcoming, yet foreboding as the sky darkened with each passing moment. The rhythmic sounds of their footsteps enveloped them in a strange symphony. Every rustle and snap of twigs resonated with her heart, our anxieties fueled by the collective energy driving them forward. "Look, there!" Jake pointed ahead, spotting the faint trail of hoofprints glistening with the promise of adventure. "Follow them," Sarah urged, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the impending storm, both in the sky and in the uncharted territory they were about to explore on an emotional level. As they navigated the winding path, the trees grew thicker. The air was thick with the scent of rain and tension, and every turn sparked anticipation. "I wonder if it feels the same way we do," she mused aloud, glancing at Jake. He met her gaze, his expression serious. "What do you mean?" "I mean, it's like we're all searching for something, this horse, us. Maybe we're all just trying to find where we belong," she said, the words spilling out before she could catch them. Jake paused, the weight of her confession settling between them. "Maybe," he replied solemnly, his brow furrowing as he considered the idea. "But it's also scary, trying to find our place in all this." Just then, the first drops of rain began to fall, plopping softly against the leaves, a foreshadowing of the storm that was about to break loose. "We need to hurry," Sarah said, looking up as the clouds roared overhead. Suddenly a loud crack of thunder shook the air. The boy who had been following closely behind jumped, nearly stumbling. "Let's go already," he shouted, and they quickened their pace. As they continued through the woods, fear and excitement intermingled in the air. Sarah sensed the magical yet chaotic energy around them intensifying. Her connection with Jake felt electric, the thrill of the chase blending into something deeper, something that made her heart pound for reasons that became harder to ignore as the weight of the atmosphere pressed around them. Then, through a thicket of trees, a flicker of movement caught their attention. "There!" Jake shouted, pointing ahead. The wild horse stood, its mane whipping in the breeze, appearing frightened yet mesmerizing, a wild spirit embodying the untamed force of their journey. "Okay, this is it," Jake shouted, determination flooding his voice. "If we can get close and calm it down again." Before he could finish, a blinding flash of lightning illuminated the sky, followed immediately by an ear-splitting crash. The horse jumped, rearing back and darting deeper into the trees. Sarah felt an avalanche of emotions crash over her, an amalgamation of fear, excitement, and the undeniable truth of their connection. "Stay close," Jake called, and they plunged forward, following the wild horse into the brush. The rain began to pour, drenching them instantly. Yet the thrill of the moment fueled their adrenaline. "I see it," It's right there, Sarah shouted, spotting the wild horse through a cluster of trees. It stood still, as if waiting for something, but what? Jake paused beside her, breathing heavily. Think we can get to it together? Together, she echoed, feeling resonance with the word. All at once, they stepped out from behind the trees, moving as one. The wild horse turned, eyes wide and expressive, as if understanding the trust they were trying to build. Easy now, Sarah cooed, stepping slowly while keeping Daisy steady beside her. Jake mirrored her movements, keeping his voice low. You can trust us, he reassured. With each slow step, they inched closer, determination forging a bridge between untamed spirits. Suddenly, the boy stumbled, breaking the fragile focus. Hey, get back! Jake barked, urgency creeping into his voice. In a flash, the wild horse bolted again, this time leaping into a divide bordered by thorny bushes. No, stop, Sarah screamed, panic flooding her veins as she watched it escape. Quick! Jake shouted as they dashed after it, hearts racing. The rain continued to pour, soaking them through, and the adrenaline made every second feel like a lifetime. As they broke through the thicket, they noticed a rocky ledge beyond. The wild horse stood perched at the edge, eyes wide, caught between uncertain safety or imminent danger. It might fall, Sarah gasped, fear gripping her heart. Sarah, we need to back it away from the ledge, Jake shouted, urgency cracking in his voice. He started inching toward the horse again, but the growing storm made the ground slippery. The wild horse whinnied, unsure, edging ever closer to the precipice. Stay strong, Jake coaxed, reaching out slowly, while Sarah felt her heart race in unison with the wild creature. Okay, allow me, she said, gathering her strength. I'll get its attention. Be careful, Jake cautioned, his voice soaked in concern. Moving slowly, Sarah focused on the horse's eyes, silently pleading with it to trust her. You're safe, I promise, she called softly, grounding her voice amid the downpour. But just as she reached out to touch the horse's mane, her foot slipped on the wet ground. Whoa! She cried out, teetering on the edge of sanity as she flailed her arms. Sarah! Jake shouted, rushing forward. But before he could reach her, the wild horse turned sharply, sensing her collapse. In that instant, everything slowed down. Sarah felt the world tilt as she lost her balance, teetering dangerously close to the edge. She braced for the fall, fear coursing through every fiber of her being. No, Jake's voice exploded through the storm, and in an instant, he lunged toward her, a fierce protectiveness pouring from him. But fate altered its course. Just as Sarah thought she would tumble over the edge, Jake's hand caught her wrist, pulling her back to safety. With a sharp gasp, she landed securely against his chest, breathless and startled. Whoa, that was too close, he murmured, holding her tight, both relieved and shaken. The wild horse, still trembling, stood at a distance, surveying the scene. You saved me, Sarah breathed, the physical connection electric, her heart pounding rhythmically against his. Of course, he replied, his breath warm against her ear, his grip unwavering. I'll always have your back. For a moment, the chaos of the storm faded, and the wildness that surrounded them morphed into something far more intimate. The weight of the world dropped away, revealing the raw essence of their connection as they stood close, heartbeats mingling as thunder rumbled overhead. But reality crashed back in as they both realized the wild horse was still on the edge, scared, unsure, and seeking refuge. Sarah's heart clenched at the sight, the storm within her intensifying. We can't leave it like this. Jake, we have to help it, she insisted, determination igniting anew. With unwavering resolve, he nodded, the fierce protection still alive in his eyes. Let's try again. You're right. We have to finish what we started. They steadied themselves, shaking the fear away. Together, they approached once more, hearts pounding not just from adrenaline, but from the urgency of the moment. The wild horse still seemed to pulse with anxiety, but Sarah knew they could forge a bond. Just trust us, she said, stepping forward gently with Jake beside her. When they reached the precipice, they extended both hands, inviting the horse to come toward them as lightning streaked across the sky. The wild horse hesitated momentarily, then took a step closer, sensing the safety they both offered. With bated breath, Sarah could feel the energies entwining a dance of vulnerability and connection forming between them. "Easy now," she cooed once more, reaching out slowly, and just like that, they shegded. The wild horse surged forward, relinquishing its fears, and nuzzled against both Sarah and Jake. The connection was palpable, a powerful affirmation of trust forged between creature and human. As raindrops poured down around them, they felt the wildness of the moment bloom, something that would carry them beyond the confines of fear, merging the reckless abandon of a storm with the serene promise of a new bond. That left them standing, drenched yet invigorated, hearts intertwined in a dance that had only just begun. In the eye of the storm, they discovered that sometimes the greatest breakthroughs come from confronting the unknown together. With the wild horse safely beside them, the world felt limitless. The skies above rumbled with promise, daring them to leap into the unpredictable magic that awaited on the horizon. But in the depths of their hearts, they understood that despite the storms to come, they would always find their way back to each other wild, untamed, and beautifully connected.